Jess, thanks for doing this.
Absolutely. My pleasure. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Just the way that you've shared your journey on social media and the things that you're doing, I really feel like there's a lot that resonates with me in your journey. So it's like, it's cool that we have this opportunity today to just chop it up and talk about life, especially because it seems like right now we have a lot in common.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing too, like I've always seen your content and I've seen you kind of grow in that path too. And I'm just like, every time I see it, I'm just like, yeah, I get that. I get that. So absolutely. It was a no-brainer when you asked.
So for like, I guess people listening who may not know who you are or what you do, like how would you describe yourself and what you're doing right now?
So I would say I am a entrepreneur, solo entrepreneur. In marketing, I do a bunch of social media stuff, but recently the big thing for me was just traveling and being able to work, digital nomading, experiencing life, getting away from Calgary life for a little bit, and just growing. I think that's a big part of growth, is just leaving something that you're comfortable with and putting yourself in tough situations that you normally wouldn't experience at home and learning from them. And that was essentially the last 8 months back here.
No, it's such a crazy journey. Like it's such an uncommon path to take, right? Like, which is like, you know, even in just entrepreneurship by itself, not just like what you're doing is even more uncommon. Like the fact that you went and traveled the world and tried to do that, with that uncommon path, there's like less people who can relate to your experience in life. Yeah. And like at this point in my life right now, leaving my job and becoming an entrepreneur as well, that's something that I feel viscerally, is like a feeling of loneliness. Even though there's people who support me and like care about me and are like, Nick, like believe in yourself. Yeah. For whatever reason, it does, I don't know if you can relate to this, but it feels like it's hard for you to actually connect with me because you don't really know what it's like. Like, I don't know.
100%. I think that's also one of the reasons why I wanted to leave too. And it wasn't because I don't love the people here, and it wasn't because no one was supportive. Everyone was so supportive of what I was doing. But it was, like you said, this deep-seated loneliness of people just not being able to understand you. Right. And I didn't really know how to get out of that and how to stop feeling that, right? So me leaving was kind of in search of that, because I knew that there were communities out there that of digital nomads, of people who love traveling, who were usually making their own business or building their own business. And I was like, I just want to connect in that way. And it's no offense to my friends here. I love them all so dearly, but it's just a different type of friendship that you have, right? So being able to find people in that kind of stage of life that you're also in, doing the same thing, experiencing the same difficulties and happinesses from business, I think that was really, really powerful. And it's interesting because I think Calgary has a lot of entrepreneurs here, but I think that the community is a little bit hard to reach at some points. And that might also be just my fault for me not trying hard enough to find it.
No, I feel you on that.
But it felt almost easier to leave and then quote unquote start new, and find people that kind of fit that picture.
Yeah, well, especially when you when you live and you were born and raised in a city. Like when you say start new, you know, I also moved away from the city for a period of time, and like it almost feels like you have to live up to the identity in which people know you as. Yes. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm Nick, and people see me as this person. So I there's almost a pressure, at least for me, to like show up as the person that people expect me to be. Like they expect me to be this confident or happy or funny or whatever the thing that this person knows me as. But when you leave, you get to just be whoever you are.
Absolutely. And you know what? Doing that is also a huge test, but also a huge learning experience, because going away, like you said, you don't have the pressure of being what people expect of you, right? Right. But that also allows you to learn who you really, really are when you're alone, like completely alone, right? And it's like, am I still this happy, positive, optimistic person, right? When I'm by myself and I don't have any pressures to perform or to be this person, right? And for me, it was such a mind blown thing where I was just like, you know what? I actually am that, but there's this other side of me where it's just like, wow, I love being by myself. I love being quiet. I don't always have to be like bubbly and happy and all that, right? So learning that and then coming back here, it's like I feel like I'm battling with myself sometimes where I'm like, okay, these people know me for this part of me, whereas like I know that there's this other part of me too. So it's like, how am I honest with myself doing this, right? So I don't know, I think coming back has just been a really, really interesting experience to say the least, right? Because you usually get pulled and you're just like, oh, I want to be how I was before I left, right? But you can't. You literally can't. In my opinion, you can't do that.
It's really hard to.
Right? Yeah.
And I think like, your environment dictates so much of your behavior. Like,
absolutely.
You know, like I definitely dealt with the same thing coming back here, and yeah, people expect you to be a certain way, but like there's a lot of things that changed about me, or that I was able to, like a lot of patterns and habits I was able to break by moving away. Like I used to be a smoker. I used to smoke cigarettes. I used to be like a chain smoker. I used to smoke like a pack a day.
Oh God. Yeah.
And it was like, which is so crazy now because that's so outside my personality.
Yeah.
But when I moved to Vancouver was the moment I could quit, because I wasn't hanging around with anybody who smoked.
Right.
Like everybody there was like, oh, I'm a pescatarian and I like run on the seawall or whatever, right? So it's like, and then when I came back, there was like almost that, it was weird. It was strange because it was like, I had changed, but for whatever reason, it feels like Calgary kind of stays in this force field of like, it's almost like preserved. Like the Stampede comes every year, there's Rewind, and then it's just like the same year plays over and over again, and everything kind of stays the same. So like, how long have you been back?
I've been back for a little over a month.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and it was actually funny because the first 2 weeks that I got back, I told no one. Like, I just needed time to figure life out, get a bit settled, just decompress from everything, and like figure out what the heck I'm doing.
Totally.
So yeah, it's been about a month, which is crazy because time flies.
Yeah.
But back to what you said, it's like Calgary is preserved.
Yeah.
So even being gone for so long, it's like I come back and I'm just like, nothing too different has happened, right? Yeah. And like for me, coming back is very much, I miss the people. I want to see my family. I want to see my friends, but the city itself doesn't change that much.
Yeah.
And no offense again to people who love Calgary and stay here. I still love it. Being away has actually made me love Calgary a lot, right? But it's a different mindset here. There's comfortability. Like people are comfortable, and that is so okay for some people. But I know for people like maybe me and you, it's like we always have a inkling to like, well, we want to do more. We want to do more. We want to experience more, right? And that was something that I just couldn't shake. So for the last, honestly, even when I was working in corporate, there was always just this part of me that was like, I need to do something for me. Like I want to do something more, and I don't want to build someone else's dream, right? I was like, if I'm putting so much effort and time into something, I want it to be my own. And that was pretty much what started me on the whole journey.
For sure.
I haven't looked back. Honestly, I could not imagine myself working in an office ever again.
It's hard.
It is, yeah.
And like the grass is always greener, right? Because like there's always like, back when I was in agency and I was working that 9 to 5, it was like, oh man, it'd be so great to be an entrepreneur. And then like now that I'm doing that, I'm like, it'd be nice to get a steady paycheck.
Yeah, you're like, what did I get myself into?
Yeah. But yeah, just back to what you were saying, like the fact that Calgary doesn't change is almost comforting, because you know that like it's this stable thing that you can always come back to. Like no matter where you go, like you could probably move somewhere for years and then come back and still feel that like it's like home.
That is exactly how I felt.
You know, I've always been curious. Like, you know, some people are okay with the programmed life is supposed to be like, you go to school, you get your degree, you get a job, you buy a house, you like whatever the checklist of whatever people we've been taught, like this is what life is. Like I've always wondered, like, are people like really okay with that, or is it just that no one's talking about it? Is it just that nobody's being honest about how they feel day to day? And like, Yeah, I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that at all?
I think it's just we're so accustomed to being on autopilot
Yeah.
that a lot of people just let life happen.
Right.
Right. And I always find there was something that I read. I think I maybe heard it on a different podcast, but it's like you need to find the balance of when to know when it's okay to let life happen to you and when you need to make things happen. Right. Because it's not always one or the other. It's like you can't always be like making things happen in life. It's like sometimes you just need to take a step back and be like, all right, just let it happen type thing. Right. So for me, I don't know. I just like when I think about people living the, you know, the dream, as we say, as we think, they all look happy, right? Most of them do look happy. But then I think when you really go down to it, I think a lot of those people haven't really even asked themselves that. And I think it's just how society happens. Like that's just how it is, right? Like you said, you get the job, you get the promotion, you have a family, you get the house. Like that's just so standard life that it's normal. So it's like you think those are the achievements and you never really ask yourself and sit down and be like, all right, like what actually makes me happy? Like how do these things make me feel? And it's a scary thing to ask yourself, right? And it's like a lot of people don't even know how to answer that. And I think it's this whole journey of self-discovery that is a terrifying thing to go on.
For sure.
But I think everyone needs to do it, but I just don't think a lot of people even know that they have to do it, right?
Yeah, it's so interesting because like we only have one life to live.
We're on borrowed time here.
Exactly.
It's like a little blip in the time.
Like even if you make all the quote unquote perfect decisions and you know play the program, you do all the things, you go on the checklist and you get all the things, you check off all the boxes, like you're gonna die and you're gonna leave this world. And it's like as stressful as it can be, like in this new way of living, like as an entrepreneur and like I only eat what I hunt type thing. Like I don't just get a paycheck for just like sometimes in corporate, you're like for a week, you're doing nothing.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, I don't have to worry about it. I'm still going to get paid. Right.
Yeah. But like, you know, I feel truly alive. And like, I think when you're chasing the checklist, you don't stop and ask yourself like, what would actually be fulfilling in my life? Yeah. Rather than like looking within, rather than looking outside and being like, well, this is what society tells me I should want. But like when I look at the world now, like there's so much depression and like how many people are on, you know, pharmaceutical drugs and antidepressants and like it's a record number. And it's like, we tell these people that they're sick because they're unhappy when they live this checklist life. Right. But like we don't question like, is society sick? Is society making us sick? Is this life actually indicative to us? And then instead of like looking at society and critiquing it, we look at ourselves and we internalize like, what's wrong with me that I'm not happy when I have this job and I have this office and I have this and that? I'm not happy. What's wrong with me? But it's like, maybe it's just that it's time for you to stop and reflect and think about what you actually want. And so that brings me like to a curious point of like, for you, like you obviously went on that journey of like questioning and doing that and taking a huge leap into like digital nomad-ship, which is insane. Like what was that process like for you of like, you know, deciding you're gonna do that thing, even with all of the societal pressures and like obviously all the risk involved in that, you know? Yeah,
it's funny. So I did a little test, you know, the human, what is it? Oh, geez.
Is it human design?
So there's human design. There's like a bunch of these different tests, right? So the one that I did was actually called the Enneagram test. Okay. And I just learned that my good side and my bad side, both of them are feelings. Like we're feelers and then we're doers, but we don't think a lot. So my good side, when I'm at my best, I do that. And when I'm at my worst, I also do that. Right. So it kind of gave me a really good understanding. Take it with a grain of salt all the time. But I'm just like, you know, that kind of made me understand and made me realize, I was like, you know what? I actually do that a lot. Like I really, really go on my gut feeling. Yeah. And then I do it. And sometimes I don't think about it, what the repercussions might be. But it got to a point when I was here, I was so unhappy. Like, I wouldn't say I was so far as I had depression or anything, but I had the symptoms of someone who was depressed.
Right.
Because even though everyone was like, oh, you're living your dream, like you're working for yourself, you have your own schedule and all that.
Yeah.
I was so unhappy because I was just like, I don't feel fulfilled. Right. And I don't know what I'm doing with my life. And to be quite honest, me leaving was almost like the last straw that I had. That was my last chance to kind of try to figure out what this is.
Right.
And I think I really had to remove myself from everything that was going on here in Calgary at home and just sit really, really deeply with my own feelings and try to discover that. So it was absolutely terrifying. And taking that first step is even more terrifying. So like once that first step happens, it kind of just snowballs and it rolls and you're just like, oh, all right, I'm doing this. I'm leaving. This is it. And yeah, it was, there was a lot of things happening all at once. And I don't know if I was trying to run away from it or if that was my form of healing. But it's probably the best decision I've made. It was the most painful one. It was the hardest, but for sure learned the most from it too and everything. So
yeah, of course.
I don't know. There's always a payoff that you have to do, right? It's like, yeah, you weigh the risk and the reward and all that. And honestly, sometimes even for me, when the risk is higher, I'll still do it because you think back, you're like, we're only on this earth for a little moment in time, right? It's like, I don't want to be laying there on my deathbed being like, oh man, I wonder what it would have been like if I did leave Calgary, or what if I said no to that job and started my own thing, right? There's this fear, I think, of doing the wrong thing. Yes. And if you don't do the wrong thing, you're never going to learn what's the right thing. And that's just kind of been something that I've been trying to repeat to myself. It's like, whatever is meant for you will always come to you, right? So it's like, even if making a decision, you're doubting yourself. You're not sure if it was the right one. It's like, I think that it brings you to exactly where you need to be, to where you're feeling uncomfortable, to where you're learning and you're growing. And even if it, in hindsight, maybe it wasn't the right decision, it's like you learn from that, right? And then you go back and you try it you try it again. For sure. And that's kind of just, I don't know, I think that's living. That's what you call living. Totally. Like, you're learning, 100%. You're making mistakes, and you're going forward. Yeah. No, I resonate a lot with that. And I do believe that. I believe that what's for you will never miss you. Yeah, absolutely. Like, you might make decisions in life that might like prolong that thing that's meant for you, but you're always being rerouted back to like your destination. And I always look at it as maybe you just weren't ready at that time to actually receive whatever you needed to receive. Totally. Right? Yeah. Totally. Yeah. So like in that journey of doing that and exploring, I guess it was just this inner calling that you just decided consciously not to ignore. Because I think there's like a lot of us, me included, in my life, I've had callings that I've ignored. But for you just decided not to ignore that thing and live life, essentially. Yeah, right? I think it just got to a point, like, I wouldn't say I didn't ignore it. I probably ignored it for a really long time, to the point where I was like, shit, I can't ignore this anymore. Like, I gotta do this. This is my chance. Yeah. And listening to that is liberating. Yeah. Scary, liberating, always worth it. For sure. So like, yeah, you go in and on this like journey of traveling and working out of a laptop anywhere in the world to kind of find yourself, find like-minded people. And I guess just to satisfy this inner calling. Do you feel like, now that you're back here, you're back home, do you feel like you got those things? Or like, what is like one of the takeaways that you have from it? Like, what are the things that you can bring back home and be like, okay, I have this like to help me or guide me throughout my journey moving forward? I think it's to never expect that something will happen and be open to new experiences always, and to always stay curious. Those are the repeating kind of mantras that happened over and over again on my trip. And I used to be a chronic type A, where I was like, I need to have everything planned out to the T. And it was actually my therapist who was like, you know what? Try something different. Take the long way home. Take the not most efficient way home.
Yeah.
When something doesn't happen your way, it's okay, right? And that's just kind of the thing that I thought of the whole trip. It was like, as much as you plan, things will always go not according to plan.
Yeah.
Is what I learned. And it's it's being okay with that, right? And finding the best in situations. And keeping an open mind has just allowed me to embrace whatever's happening, regardless of if it's something internally, something that I'm feeling, or something that's happening externally, right? It's like you pivot, you learn to pivot, and you take it as a learning experience, right? And you're like, oh, this is a good story for later.
For sure.
Right? So those are the things. And staying curious is just, it's not even from traveling. It's just in life, right? There's so much to learn. There's so many different types of people out there. Yeah. And each person that I've met has a different life story. And being curious about like, oh, maybe this is why they're acting this way. Like what's behind it? Or staying curious about maybe an activity or something like that. Just being like, oh, this is something cool I want to try, right?
Yeah.
It's being open, and it's not being so regimented in a way of thinking that I think this whole experience has really, really taught me. And it's something that I'm going to take with me forever. Like it's just something that shifted in me, right? Yeah. From the travel. And I think that's something very, very valuable that everyone can take away. Not even if you're just traveling, just even if you're living in your hometown still. It's like, be open-minded, stay curious, and it's okay if things don't go your way, right? Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, being able to embrace what life is giving you.
Yeah, and embrace change, right? It's like we're, as humans, like we're not meant to, one, stay in one place forever, and two, be the same person that we were 5 years ago, a year ago even, right? So it's just like, it's okay to change, and you're meant for it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a big one. I think I struggle with that a lot as well, just trying to embrace life. Obviously, this journey has helped me do that a little bit more. You know, you're just kind of like training that muscle of like embracing these things. But I think it's really common for like us to want to plan things, because that gives us an idea of like, or a sense of security of some kind. Even if it's a false sense of security, you feel secure in this plan. I think that's also what people feel secure in, is like, you know, if you're doing the checklist life or the dream or whatever, you can find security in the fact that this path has been validated by society, and X% of people, the majority of people are doing this too. So you can find security in that. But like when you're on a path that is like less traveled, or your own path, where you're not looking at other people and being like, what does this person value, or what does society value, and let me try to live up to that. Like you have to like, and maybe you do have a plan for that, but it's not going to go your way, and you have to learn to like embrace that instead of shutting it off. Yeah. Because like when you close yourself off to an outcome that you may not have wanted, you're closing yourself off to all the lessons and all the tools and all the treasure that you can actually get from that experience. You know what I mean? Like, and like, you know, when I moved to Van, I was there for a little bit over a year, and I always say like it was one of the best years of my life. And typically people will be like, oh, it's because like Vancouver's awesome, right? It's because like there's great restaurants, and it's because there's a beach there, and it's because it's like doesn't snow as much, right? Like that's why it was so awesome. And I was like,
very all external stuff, right?
Right. But actually like those things are all great, but the thing that made it the best year of my life was that it was the hardest year of my life. That like I had to go and do this thing that I was like unsure, like I don't even know what I'm doing. Like I'm supposed to go do this thing, and I'm living by myself, and I'm away from all my friends, and I don't know anybody, and I really proved to myself what like I'm capable of, and that year allowed me to be proud of myself more so than just being happy. Yeah. You know, because like happiness is almost an outcome of being proud of yourself. So like, what are the things that you have to do that? You know. Yeah. And I'm assuming it's the same thing for you. Like you talk about how difficult the travels were, even though people might be like, "Wow, it must be so awesome to go and like travel and do all this stuff," but like. Yeah, maybe you could speak a little bit more on, you know, what was difficult about it?
Yeah.
To kind of like shed some light, because we always glamorize and glorify certain things, you know?
Yeah, it's funny because the exact same thing for me. It was, I'd say, one of the most fulfilling experiences of my life. But when I actually look back on it, it was probably one of the toughest years of my life.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say I was the happiest. Like there was a lot of shit that you're kind of going through, right? You're learning about yourself. And it was a very sad time, I think I would say. But like you said about Vancouver, it was probably one of the best times of my life because I needed it, right? It was, lots of emotional stuff going through me and learning about myself. And even though it was probably the toughest time of my life, I would do it all over again. Yeah. Right? And that's the thing that I think that a lot of people come out of those experiences with. There's this term, I think it's called, actually, I'm not even going to try to repeat it. It's okay. It's like there's a lot of trauma, right? So lots of people say that it's like, a traumatic experience. But on the other end of the spectrum, it's something that people, like a lot of people actually don't hold on to that trauma. They end up being better people from it. Of course. Right? So I think that's really relatable in terms of like, that time was shit. It sucked. It's very glamorized. But I tried to be super, super authentic with it and be really honest about like, hey, I might be traveling the world, but like I wake up every morning with anxiety. My heart is racing because of instability, right? And that just comes hand in hand with doing something completely new that is not a path that's really traveled on, right? And you don't have this thing that's completely outlined for you and be like, these are the steps you have to take, right? And it's something that I had to embrace, and it was tough. Yeah.
Do you mind sharing some of the things that like, because like, you're a feeler, right? So you're exploring these feelings that you have. Yeah. Like what was like the core of the sadness? Was it just instability, or is there something deeper there?
It was a huge heartbreak. Yeah. So that was actually the whole digital nomad thing was actually a plan that I had with my ex-partner. Oh, wow. Right. So I was so excited to do this. Like we both had positions where it was something that we could do together and kind of build this life. Right. And everyone says expectations, the killer of all happiness. Right. And I lived that to my truth. Like that was fully what I lived. Yeah. And the whole time was kind of me wanting to prove to myself that I didn't have to do this with someone else, that I was absolutely capable of doing it by myself. And I think that was the source of a lot of the pain of me moving through that emotion, right? And sitting in it and feeling it versus trying to run away from it, right? And when I first started traveling, it's something new. It's something I've always wanted to do. So I was so excited. I was so pumped. And then maybe a month or two in, I was just like, you can't run from your feelings. Like they're going to follow you wherever you go. So you better just sit down and like get through it. Not get through it, but feel it and understand it. Right. So that was the source of a lot of the pain. Yeah. And it was also missing people, family, friends, and missing normalcy, like just having a normal life, right? That I wanted pre-travel or post-travel, sorry. Right. Like before leaving and everything, I hated the normal life. I was like, this is not me. Like I'm not feeling fulfilled. This is not what I want to do. Right. But then it's funny because when you're out and about and everything, you're like, you know what? It'd be nice to have a routine again. Of course. I miss all that. But yeah, that was a big source of, I think, growth for me, was finally being okay with sitting there and figuring out the feelings and why things happen the way they happen. And I think that also plays into the not having expectations. Right. And being okay and having an open mind and being okay with it when things change. Yeah. Right. So that was a huge source. And then you add on the entrepreneur stuff where it's like, you're trying to make your own money. You're trying to pay for all this and build your business at the same time. And it's just a whole bunch of stress that you just learn to handle.
Yeah.
You're essentially forced to handle it because no one else is going to handle it for you.
Exactly.
Right? So it's like, you better do it, or I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I appreciate you for like being so vulnerable about your experience. Like, I think that's a really common thing for me. When I reflect back on my past breakups, I didn't miss like my exes or whatever, like in the early on stages of the breakup when things were really bad.
Right.
Like I think I missed them more when it was like things that I wish I could share with somebody.
Yeah.
Like I'm having this experience, or I have this achievement or whatever, like, and it kind of like, that realization is like, no, it really is about the people that you get to spend life with, more so than the things that you even experience.
Yeah.
Like, community is so important. And I guess that's why like we're willing to, you know, travel the world to go find that, and like leave your hometown to go find people who resonate more with you, right?
Yeah.
And like, at the end of the day, like the whole entrepreneurship thing, when I glamorized it or glorified it, it was kind of like, oh, I'm gonna be able to like make my own life. And a big part of it is like, for me, is to build wealth that you can't get from a salary.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
You might get the stability from a salary, but you can make an extra $2,000 a month on a side hustle way faster than you're gonna get an extra $2,000 a month on a promotion.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know, so like for me, there's also that wealth aspect in there.
And like, wealth is not just about money, right? It's just having a freedom lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
It's like you're free to do what you actually love to do.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have a negative connotation with entrepreneurship as being like, oh, you guys are all just like money hungry.
Yeah.
You want to make millions and millions and everything. And it's like, all right, yeah, but it goes deeper than that, right? Money is just it's a form of energy, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, you're exchanging money for something, or it's like when you have enough of it, it's like it just allows you to do things that you really, really love without feeling guilty or feeling the pressure of having to support a family or something like that.
Exactly.
Right? It's
and
freedom.
money is useless by itself.
It is, yeah.
You need to spend it on something to be worth something, right?
Exactly, right? So I also really, really like, I resonate with that too, and I understand that, because wanting to be an entrepreneur, you just don't really think about, when I first wanted to do it, I didn't think about not being able to communicate or not being able to interact with people that much, right? It was very much just it was a selfish reason. It was like, I want to do this for me, right? It's not for anyone else. And I think that's fair.
Of course.
But there's so many things in entrepreneurship that like just aren't really talked about that much.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's starting to come up a lot more because there's a lot more entrepreneurs now and everything, but it's just things that you never even thought about, right? It's like, missing that connection with people, missing the collaboration, and the connections that you have, right? So that's kind of why I think it's so important. It was important for me to search and reach out and find people that also understood that, because if you're not going to get the connection in the office, you're going to find it somewhere else, right? Yeah. And before, I kind of had a doom and gloom thought about Calgary, where I was like, oh, I don't have a community here, all that stuff, right? And I invited you to that group. It's like, I was like, I'm going to create it here. If I can't find it, I'll make it here, because there are amazing creatives and entrepreneurs 100%. Here that are doing wonderful things. And I was like, I am 100% sure that they are going through the exact same feelings that I'm going through, right? And it's true. They are. Like, even the ones that I have met recently, they're like, thank you so much for creating this, because this is what we were missing.
Yeah.
Right.
I got to hit that up sometime.
You should. Oh my gosh.
I gotta come through. I will.
It's unreal chats. Like, we're just hanging out for like 2 hours or something and just talking about life and business. Right. And that's just what we connect on, because we understand and we've gone through the same things. Right.
Yeah.
And it's not to say I don't love talking to my friends about it and everything, but it's just a different connection.
For sure, because they're walking a similar path, and they connect with you through experience.
Exactly.
Through knowing, right? Yeah. Rather than just empathy and like imagining. That must be hard for you, I imagine.
Exactly.
Whereas people are like, no, I know that's hard because that happened to me last week or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And it's the same goes for someone who has never left their home.
Yeah.
And to live somewhere else, right?
Yeah.
You could say, it was scary. It was lonely. They're like, yeah. But like, I don't think anyone would really, really understand that unless they've done it themselves.
Exactly.
Right? So, yeah.
Yeah. And that's like a similar motivation to why I started this podcast too. It's like, I love all my friends and all the people that like I've come up with in this city or whatever.
Yeah.
But like, I definitely felt like like I said earlier, like I think that people are struggling with things more than they are willing to express.
Yeah.
Maybe like even to themselves. They don't even want to express that to themselves or see that for themselves because that truth is too much of a burden to bear. So they rather dissociate or ignore it or like chase the next thing to distract them from what's happening within them. And like, you know, instead of sitting around and complaining, like nobody wants to be vulnerable or real or authentic about what they're actually going through, and everybody wants to feel like they all have it figured out.
Yeah.
Like, why don't I create this platform where it's like the process of being like, you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to come from a place of knowing. You're coming from a place of figuring it out. Like, but it's just cool to be able to like share in this feeling, and you feel connected to people who are just willing to be like, yeah, me too. I'm there too. This is what life is like for me too. Or like, things are actually hard. It's not all like this really pretty picture on Instagram or like, what's new with you? Oh, well, I just bought this house, or I just did this, or like only talking about the things that I guess are comfortable or easy to talk about, you know?
And I think that's just all a part of living, right? I think living is feeling everything. It's not just the good, right? It's not just the bad. It's every part of it. And I think that's why a lot of people are, like you said, depressed or something like that, is that they're dealing with those feelings of being scared and not really knowing. That's hard.
Yeah.
Like admitting to yourself that you're not happy is tough, because
So
when you admit to that, it's like, all right, then I should probably do something about it, right?
Exactly.
And that's hard fucking work.
Yes.
That is painful, not fun stuff. And it's way easier to just ignore it, right? And be like, you know what? It's not that bad. I can pull through, right? And I don't know. I also think that you can't force someone into that, into healing, into wanting to do the work. They have to get to it at their own time. Yeah. And I think I had the mistake of trying to do that for people too. I was like, oh, like maybe you should take a look at this, or like, and it's like, no, they're not going to do it if they're not ready, right?
They're not.
So, yeah.
And I think the thing that pushes people to be ready is pain.
Absolutely.
You have to be sick of your own situation.
Yeah.
You have to be like so fed up with your own patterns that keep you in this place. But like you said, like this is something that I've thought so much, which is like so cool that you brought that up, right? Which is like, yeah, if you actually acknowledge the truth that you're unhappy, you're going to have to do something about it. Yeah. Or you're just living your life complicit in your own unhappiness. Whereas it's easier to live a lie. It's easier to be like, no, it's fine. There's all these good things about it or whatever. And like, not that it's bad to like be grateful for stuff and try to find the good and positive aspects of your circumstances. But like, I think that's huge. And like, you know, these can be huge things. Like it can be your work. It can be your spouse. It can be your partner. Like, like you can be so unhappy with your partner. And like, if you have to tell yourself the truth of that, you might have to leave someone you were with for 5 years.
Exactly.
And how scary is that? Like how much work are you going to have to do to leave that relationship? So it's just easier to just be like, no, that's fine.
It's way easier. Yeah. It's less painful. You're not severing like all the different relationships that you built together or something like that. And you're not going into the unexpected, right? Yeah. It's that whole thing about having the checklist, the plan, right? Following the same, that path, right? Yeah. And being so adamant about being like, no, I'm going to stay on this path versus being open to different paths can lead to the same result or something like that, right?
And with the checklist too, it's like the checklist also has a timeline where it's like by 30 you should have this checklist. Oh by 40 you should have this checklist, right? Yeah. Which is the other thing that stops people from doing the thing, because they're like, well, I'm already this age,
I'm too old,
I should just do whatever. I should just be happy in this situation. It's too late for me, right? And we talk about it being easier to ignore and lie to ourselves, but in the long term it's not. Like there's like I said, 10 years from now, there's still so much life left. But when you get caught up in this checklist, you feel behind. And so you're trying to rush to this thing. Yeah. But the truth is, from my perspective, is we have so much time. Like even if you're 30 years old and you find yourself in this relationship that you're not happy in, you should leave it.
Yeah, it's never too late.
Because like you're 30, you're gonna live to 100, you're gonna live 70 more years in this unhappy thing just because society says by 30 you should be married. Like it's honestly insane.
It really is. And it's also the fear, right? Like I I think a lot of people are governed by fear, right?
Yes.
A lot of their decisions are fear-based. And I don't blame them.
Yeah, of course.
Because again, it's terrifying to do something new, to do something that you don't know what the outcome's going to be, right? And to leave a comfortable life for something that is terribly uncomfortable, right? And I think until you've actually tried something that's super uncomfortable, it's going to be the worst thing that you ever do, right?
Yeah.
Like just that first time of doing something that's so shit and like something that you're terrified of is the biggest, I think, change. It's like a tipping point. It's just like
you have to reprogram the human mind.
You do. You're like, this is nothing. Like you're just like, I didn't think life was going to be ever like this, right? And it's a beautiful thing. I don't know. It's terrifying but beautiful is what I always like to say.
Yeah.
And like you'll find beauty in everything that happens to you. And I think it's having that mindset of this isn't happening to me, it's happening for me.
Yes.
Right? I need to go through this.
For sure.
And that's the big thing that I kept telling myself. Even through my darkest times, I was like, I need to do this, right? I need to go through this and embrace it.
For sure. Well, like when you think about like just humans as like animals or evolutionarily, like fear is what kept us alive. You're like, oh, we shouldn't go over there because we have food here, and if we go over there and there's no food, we're dead.
Yeah.
But do you want to live in a life where you're just in survival mode?
Right.
Where you're just always just trying to survive? And that's the thing, to thrive or to have an abundant life, you have to reprogram yourself from survival to allow yourself to accept more, which is embracing fear. You know, but that's a really hard thing to do because like, you literally have to reprogram the human mind that's like based on like fear to survive.
It's our natural instinct.
It's our natural instinct to be based in fear, but like it's like, how can you expect to live a life of love and like abundance or beauty when the seed of all of your decisions is fear? Like, how can you expect anything but a life driven by fear and anxiety and depression if you're always just the compass, the thing driving the car is fear?
Yeah, exactly. And that, honestly, that resonates a lot with me, right? Because leading up to the actual decision of me leaving, it was all fear, right? You don't do something that you want to do because you're scared of the outcome.
Yeah.
Right? And on the other side of fear is something beautiful, right?
Yeah.
And I think you can relate to that. It's just
for sure.
Yeah.
And like beautiful doesn't mean like I'm happy every day.
No, it doesn't.
There's like a lot of days where I'm doubting myself all the time. I'm just like, what am I doing, dude? I'm like scripting this YouTube video and I'm like, you know, literally going door to door to businesses and just introducing myself to people and being like, hey, I'm Nick. What's your name? Oh, that's awesome. How long have you guys been open for? Like whatever, just trying to get clients and putting myself out there to do that. And we're so used to having these instant things, these like instant gratification or instant results. And like even in the checklist of life, we're told once you get a degree, then you're going to get a job and that job will pay you this and that will afford you this. And like there's a lot of like security, if this, then that built into it. Right. Yeah. Whereas like in this world, it's kind of like you just have to trust it. You just have to like do it, and then like no one's telling you it's gonna be okay, but you just have to like you just have to do it.
Well, that's the big thing about being alone too, and leaving your home. Yeah, is that you have to trust the process. That's the thing, you just have to trust, because what's the other option? You don't trust it, you don't do anything, right?
Yeah.
So if you have such a big pulling to go and do something, if you don't trust it, then it's not going to happen, right? Because you're going to be constantly living in fear, and then you're not going to be doing things to the extent that you should be doing it, right? And then you get into the cycle where you start blaming, and you play maybe a victim card where you're like, oh, that actually was a shit experience. But it's like, was it a shit experience because you made it and like you weren't fully in it? On the flip side, it's like, do you just completely trust it and just go with the flow, right?
Yeah.
So it's like...
And even in hindsight, those are all judgments.
Those
are all judgments of like, oh, this was good, this was bad, this was this was that. But like, when I go back and look at some of the objectively worst times in my life, I'm like, wow, if that didn't happen, then this wouldn't have happened. And if that didn't happen, then this wouldn't have happened. And then like, because ultimately, even with all the struggle and stuff, I'm happy that I'm here right now and I'm the person that I am right now.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, even with all of that, like, the weird thing is, like, I even look at my old breakups and stuff as like almost nostalgic, because it's like, wow, like the character that gave me, and like the tools that gave me to like move into my new relationships, or like my relationship with myself or whatever, like, has been so valuable. And like, if you're judging this thing as bad and you only want good things, you're really stopping yourself from growing.
Yeah. And that in itself, like, is a negative experience, right? And I think it was Alan Watts who has this law of if you're chasing something that's positive, that in itself is a negative experience. And if you are looking at a positive experience and wanting more, that is also a negative experience, right? So it's this really weird mindfuck of thing when you think about it. It's like, whatever you're chasing, it's actually, it pulls you more away from what you truly should be looking at, right?
Well, you're putting all your energy into what you don't have.
Exactly. Yeah, and you're focusing on that, right?
Yeah.
So
one of the main reasons I left my job was like, I was miserable. For me, it's like, I really want to be a father. Outside of the whole checklist thing of like, you should have a family or whatever, there's actually something in me that wants that, you know? And like, I don't want to be the dad who comes home and is like, hates his life and has to escape from everything because I have to wake up and go to this job that I hate tomorrow. And
absolutely, yeah.
I had this thought the other day where it's like, you know, in that point of my life, I really was trying to seek balance. And I compartmentalized myself into all these different compartments. I was like, this is my career, this is my health, this is my spirit, this is my mind, this is my emotions, this is this. And how do I balance all of these different things, you know? All the time,
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then I forget where I read this thing, but I read this thing about integration. Integrating these parts of your life so there's harmony. It's not necessarily balance where I'm evenly distributing all of these things, but it's in harmony. How are all of these things actually integrated? And then when you decide in your life where like, oh no, this is this side of me and this is this side of me and this is the part of me that does this and this is the part of me that does that, you're disintegrated. And what is it, disintegrated? You're disintegrating.
Yeah.
Yourself then is like, is washing away, is becoming smaller, is slowly dying.
Yeah.
Now my goal is actually to be in harmony, is like to be in this, like, how is everything moving towards this one thing? I can't have this one thing out of harmony.
Yeah.
I can't have this one thing out of my values and principles. Cause like, you know, and at that time, like I had this podcast about pursuing your passions and like doing the things that you love and like living your life for yourself and ignoring the voices of society and the outside world and getting into your inner voice. And at the same time, I'm clocking in at this job that I hate and I'm like decompartmentalizing that.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, well, that's me. And then like, that's my work me. And then the real me comes out on this, but that's actually impossible. Like I found myself in that. Like I would talk to people and I wouldn't even be able to be myself. I wouldn't be able to engage with the person in the way that I can, like since I've quit the job, you know? And like, yeah, that's just been such a powerful insight for me, like integration. And when you're not integrated, you're disintegrating.
Yeah, that's powerful.
You know?
That's a good one.
Yeah, it's a trip.
And it's an interesting thing to grasp where it's not, like you said, not everything has equal weight at one point in your life. That might change, right? Different parts, like say, I'm trying to build my business a lot more, right? So parts of my life are going to suffer from that. Not suffer, but time is going to be taken away from those. And it's going to be more focused on building my business for a little bit, right? Yep. But a year down the road, that might change. I might be like, all right, I really have to focus on my relationships right now. My business is good. It's like, it shifts, right?
Exactly.
So it's for sure, it's finding harmony, right? It's not spreading yourself so thin where you're everywhere equally. It's finding what's important to you at that moment and focusing on it.
Totally.
And for sure, that's harmony.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And if that's in alignment, then maybe your business is also good for your relationships.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's a huge thing.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I'm just like randomly pondering life, and I'm still in the middle of the process now. Like, even there's people who ask me for advice, or there's like DMs and stuff, and people like, Nick, you have all of these insights. Can you help me with this thing? And it's like, I barely know what's going on for me. I barely know what I'm doing for myself.
And it's just part of the process, right? It's like you just don't feel like the right person for people to be coming to
Mm-hmm.
at a certain point, because I know for me, like I was battling a lot of stuff that I was trying to figure out, right?
Yeah.
Whether it be social media stuff that I'm trying to learn, and like
Right.
people are coming to me for advice, right?
Right,
Because they're
right,
like, oh,
right.
you're an expert. And I was like, holy shit, I don't know what's going on. Like I'm
Yeah.
still learning, right?
Yeah,
So it's like,
yeah.
you don't feel like the expert that other people see you as.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that also relates back to just everything else in life too, right? Like I had a friend come up to me and she was like, holy shit, like you are so self-aware, like you've done so much work,
Yeah.
like you're an inspiration. And it's sad because like I don't see myself as that sometimes too. Like you have those doubts and you're like, I've done work, but I have so much more work to do,
Yeah.
type of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's having that whole mindset of not being enough.
Yeah.
I think that's also been a thing that I think propelled me into taking these travels too, right? It was like I felt like I had something to prove to myself.
Yeah.
Like it's like I wanted to do this for so long.
Mm-hmm.
I need to prove to myself that I can do it.
Yeah.
Right?
That's such a common thing. Like, I don't know. I resonate with that a lot. Like,
Yeah.
there's many times in my life where I feel like I'm not enough.
Yeah.
There's more times in my life where I feel like I'm not enough
Absolutely.
than I feel like I'm enough.
Yeah. Oh no.
I don't
Let's
know,
change
like-
that. Let's change that.
Like, I don't know. Like, I like, you know, I don't say that in like a woe is me type thing, but it's like just something that I know is the honest truth.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that has taken me really far in life. Like you said earlier, like traumas or whatever can have people react in totally different ways. Like that can push you to do something, or it can completely paralyze you.
Yep.
Like the idea of feeling not enough can either motivate you, which it has done for me in my life, or it can paralyze you, where you're just like, I'm not enough. I have so much work to do. Oh my gosh, that's so intimidating and so hard. Like, how am I even gonna do that? You know what? I'm just not even gonna try. It's too much. You know, but for me, it's been positive all the way up into the points where it's not positive.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, but like you said about curiosity at that point, like what do you have to be enough? Like, do you have that picture for you? Like, what is enoughness?
What is enough? Oh my God, that's deep.
Is that crazy? Is that too much?
What is
have to go there.
enoughness? Gosh, I think my one goal in life is just to really be fulfilled in whatever I'm doing. I don't know what that is, and I think we're all on the journey to try to figure out what fulfills you truly. And I think that also shifts a lot during your life. But I think every time that I feel like I am fulfilled, it's when I'm at my happiest. That's the happiest, right? And I truly believe that we are on this earth to provide service to people.
Yes.
I know that that's when I feel the greatest, is when I help other people feel good too, right? And that could be in the simplest things. It could be like a smile walking down the street or something like that. It could be helping your friends with something or letting them confide in you. It doesn't have to be this grand thing where you're making tons of money helping people. Like whatever it is, I think it's finding fulfillment. And I think that's all we're really searching for, right?
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that a lot. Because I actually do think that. I think that like it's an idea in the Bible, but it's an idea that I had even before I started kind of exploring more into Christianity and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like we're all here with a unique gift. And when we get caught up in like money or like what's in demand, what's the in-demand skill that I should learn, what's the trade that I should learn so I can make money, you take yourself away from that, from exploring what your actual gift is. And your actual gift might just be being like a really great friend. It might be a really great listener. It might be like whatever that thing is. And if society doesn't value that, that's going to pay you something per hour to be that, like then we just abandon our gifts.
Yeah.
But like the greatest thing that you can give is what's uniquely inside you.
Absolutely.
Instead of trying to be like, this is valuable, let me try to emulate this and get and like differentiate so I can get this segment of whoever, you know?
Yeah. How about for you? What do you think?
What's going to make me enough?
Yeah.
This was a thing that I really explored recently where it was like, because I was so sad and like really down on myself and being like, yeah, I took this path. I've only been doing this for 4 months.
It's only been 4 months.
It's only been 4
Shit.
months.
You're
It's only been 4
killing
months.
it. Good job.
So I'm very early on in this fully entrepreneurial life. And I've just been I was just judging myself and being like, you know, dude, you're not making enough money. You're not making enough money. You want to be a father. How are you going to provide for your family?
Right.
Like, your savings are slowly dwindling as you pursue this dream. Like, this is not going to be enough, especially with like housing prices and inflation and interest rates and all of this. Like, I went into this like doom spiral of just like, dude, you should have kept that job. You should have just done this thing. You weren't strong enough mentally to be able to like just gut it out in this place or whatever. And then I started asking myself those questions. The same question I just asked you is like, what would make me enough? And for me, I realized that this whole idea of me not being enough, it lives in the future. Like right now, in this moment, there's more than enough. Like I have a place to sleep. I have money to get food. I'm alive. And that's enough. I don't have a kid where I have to feed him or her or whatever. And all of this fear and anxiety lives in the future of this imaginary timeline that may never happen, that I'm not prepared for right now. And like if I live in that dynamic, then I'm never gonna feel like enough.
Yeah.
You know, so for me, like enoughness or wealth is like being happy with where you are to a certain extent, where like the pursuit of more isn't motivated by, well, I'm not enough and I have to get more. It's literally just like, okay, I have enough right now, but you know, more would be nice and I'm capable of more. So let me like test those waters and do that.
I love that. Yeah.
You know, but it's always a battle. The battle of not enoughness is the lifelong one for me, I feel.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I like that one. That one's good.
Yeah, like that's just my own exploration of it. I don't know. Maybe there will be a timeline. Like I said, like there's no, like maybe 10 years from now, I will not be enough and not have enough to do those things. I have no idea.
Yeah, who knows?
Who knows?
But right now, it's enough.
Right now, it's enough.
I love it.
Yeah. And yeah, I've been doing it for 4 months. So like, how much can I judge at something that's 4 months old?
Yeah, you got a lot of time ahead of you.
You know?
It's going to be good.
Hope so.
Yeah, for sure. Believe it. It's really empowering and just really nice to see people, even in my own circle, right? Even extended circle, that have made the jump.
Yeah.
And they're like, fuck, it's scary, but like wouldn't trade it for anything. And I'm just like, yeah, you keep going, dude. Like,
for sure.
Keep going, because the people who do make the jump, I think you've taken the hardest step already.
And as much as I talk about all of those feelings of not enoughness and hardness, like the thing is, on this podcast, I emphasize difficult things a lot because I think there's a tendency to glamorize everything, whether that's relationships or career paths or whatever. We want to talk about how great things are, especially on a podcast. We want to be like, everything's awesome. This is me speaking from a place of awesomeness. Yeah. But like for me, the real connection and the real value that I can bring to people is like, here's the hard stuff that nobody wants to talk about this experience, so you can feel like you're seen and that you are not alone in your experience of difficulty. But in this experience, even in the last 4 months, I've had moments of like, I can't believe I'm getting paid to do this.
Right?
Like, I'm such a fan of mixed martial arts, and, you know, I've been training it for a few years now, and like, you know, my first paying client is my coach, who's like, I'm doing videos for him, and it started out as a bunch of free videos. Of course. But then it was just like, hey, I have this thing, like, how much is your rate? And I was like, just threw out a number, just made something up. Yeah. And he was like, yes. And I was like, nice. And then so it was just like, and then I'm shooting this fight card. Yeah. Right. Of like some of my training partners and friends, like they're fighting in this thing, and I'm recording this thing, and I'm in this event for free, and I'm like also getting paid. And I'm just like, wow, I can't believe that like I'm a professional MMA videographer. Like this is crazy.
And it's like, if you were still at the agency life, it's like there's probably no way that you would have ever taken initiative to start something like that, right? And it's that whole what if, right? Yeah. It's like, what if I just did that? Or, you know, even now you have the what if. It's like, oh, what if I just stayed at the agency, right? Yeah. So it's like, it goes both ways.
Yeah, and the grass is always greener, but like I do, like, it's great to have my partner to remind me, because I was even like ruminating on that the other week, and I was like, maybe I should have just stayed there, and I could have had a side hustle, and this would be some side income or whatever. Yeah. And she's like, no, you hated it. Like you were miserable, and I remember that. I remember waiting for days to be over.
Oh man.
Like just being like, I can't wait till this work day is done. I think that's super common. I don't know. Like
it is. Oh, absolutely. Waiting for the weekend, waiting for the day to end. And it's like, it's mind blowing how many people just sit in suffering.
Yeah.
Because of fear and because it's somewhat comfortable, I guess. It lets them live a comfortable life. Yeah. Right. But yeah, I can't. Once you get a taste of doing something that you're actually passionate about, how can you ever go back to something like that? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. It's a roller coaster though. It's a roller coaster.
And I really do think it's so important to have such a supportive community around you, whether it's a significant other, parents, friends that just believe in you. Yeah. Because when I didn't believe in myself, I had other people tell me, they're like, no, like you're doing unreal, right? It's like, all right, I needed to hear that because that's not how I feel. Right?
Yeah. Like, where do you find the most support in your life?
Honestly, I am so grateful, but it's my mom, it's my friends, it's even random people who follow me. Yeah. Right? It's,
totally.
The community is unreal. And I think that's just something that I've been really, really just blessed with is having people around me that are like, just like, go chase your dreams, do this, right? And like, even when it gets hard, keep going at it, right? And like, mind you, it's like, my mom's like, all right, like you do it, but like just be smart about it, right? Yeah, whereas like for me, it's like for my friends, they're just like, geez, you're such an inspiration. And like, that's the whole thing about feeling fulfilled. It's like when I know that I've had an impact like that, where I inspire people to do something, that is all I need. I can die happy. I'm like, that's all I need, really.
That's a huge impact. Right? That's a huge ripple effect.
And it's crazy to think that you just living life can do that for someone, right? And living life and being public about it, I guess, to a certain extent. Yeah. But it's being open about it and being authentic about it. And I think that's what I really love. Yeah. Like before I was just like, oh no, I want to be super private. I don't want to share anything that I'm doing, all that. But then you see the benefits for other people when you do share, and you're like, why would I not? Right. Yeah. And obviously you have to get to that point before there's a lot of people who, I was one of them, was scared of what other people thought, right? It's like, oh, like I look funny or I'm saying weird things. Yeah. But it's like, I'm at this point where I'm just like, I don't care at all. I literally don't care. I'm like, I'm doing this one for me because it makes me feel good. And I know that there's someone else who can resonate with it. And if there is one person who resonates with it, that's good. That's all I need.
Totally.
Right?
Totally.
Yeah, I'm absolutely sure you can relate to that with all the good stuff you put out. It's like, oh, geez.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, yeah, it's crazy. And I'll say this about the things that you share. Like, I really appreciate it, and I really it's great. It's valuable for me to like read someone else's experience and like, especially the path you've chosen to take. Like, it's a life that lends to glamour and glorification and like. What a perfect thing. But like your willingness to be vulnerable about like the challenges that you face, like not only I'm sure is it cathartic for you to share those things, but it's also like an olive branch to other people who might feel the same way and might feel lonely in that experience, right?
Absolutely.
And like even with the people that support you, like even the random people that follow you, like, they might be getting something out of it, but even in return, you get something too. Yeah. Like there's people who randomly follow me that like, I don't know if they know this, but they fucking make my whole day just by commenting on a thing.
Exactly.
So like, it's like, there's this guy, Joel Song. If you're listening to this, Joel, I see you every time. He comments on a lot of my stuff and so encouraging. And like this dude, I don't even know him, never met him in real life, but I feel his energy through the interwebs and like I'm sure he feels mine as well and resonates with me on my path and that's cool, especially like the whole reason I started this thing was to find connection, was to find people who can resonate with me on a certain frequency that is more than just like catching up on the surface level things that we all like to like catch up with people with and kind of digging deeper. Like, so yeah, like sharing yourself can be extremely scary. It can be like, oh, what if people judge me? What if this person thinks this of me or that of me? But to me, it's been such a great filter of like who's for me and who's not.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, if I have to worry about me expressing myself authentically or honestly, and this person's not going to like me, well, then for me to maintain a relationship with that person, I'm going to have to not be myself for an extended period of time, which is exhausting. Especially like you have no control of what people think of you. So you're putting all your energy into that. It's like you're just giving away your energy to something that's completely out of your control and you're just wasting it.
Exactly.
Instead of like putting your energy in the people who support you and like, and just trying to find your people by being yourself actually.
And even this path is a lonely path, right? Just like of the self-discovery, it's like there's a ton of friends that I've just had to leave behind because we just didn't resonate.
Yeah.
Right. And nothing wrong with them. It's just that I'm on a different path. Right. And I'm sure you've also experienced this, but there's some people that you hang out with, some groups that you hang out with that you just leave feeling exhausted, right? And there's some people that you hang out when you leave, you're just like, you're energized and you're invigorated and you're like, I need more of that in my life, right?
For sure.
Because it's exhausting not being truly you, right?
Yeah. Well, you're living in a world of fear.
Yeah.
You're being driven by fear of like, what if this person thinks this?
Yeah.
And then of course you're exhausted and of course you have a life that's not abundant because it's all fear-based.
Yep.
Yeah. You know, a part of my journey of self-awareness was because of my romantic relationships.
I think that you as a person grow the most when you're in a relationship that is, honestly, even if it's bad or worse, I think that, at least for me, is when I grew the most.
Yeah.
It was because of relationships.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, and those are the things that also like pointed out a lot of things to me. Like, oh, Nick, you are emotionally reactive to this. Like, look at that and explore that. And my whole journey of self-love was pretty much based on like, oh, my relationships aren't working out because I don't love myself.
Yeah.
And like, you know, as much as like, you know, we talk about the entrepreneurial path being like lonely and like, you know, you got to be the one to be there for you and you got to do that. Like, I think that that's just step one. Like, you need to be there for yourself in order to have these relationships, like you said, that humans are here to have.
Absolutely.
You know, like, I don't know, like, is your romantic relationship lessons / experiences / past like something you're willing to talk about and share about? Or
yeah, absolutely.
We don't have to like go down there either, but
no, let's see how far we can go. Let's do it. We like these talks.
I'm just curious because like, you know, obviously, like you said, like, you know, relationships or the ending of relationships can be such a catalyst for growth. Like, what are some of the lessons that maybe you took from your most recent relationship that didn't work out and kind of brought you onto this journey? Like, is there like an experience that you can share to kind of maybe help somebody who might be listening to this right now who is in a similar, like they just went through a breakup or something like that, you know?
The big thing for me was that you can pour so much into a relationship. You can give it your all, and it still might not work out.
Yes.
And it's not your fault. And that doesn't mean that the next relationship you're in, you should hold back. And I think that's something that I've just had to remind myself, right? It's like, I am who I am, and I will always be someone that will give it my all. And if I'm with you, you are it, right?
Yeah.
But you never really know what someone else is going through. And I think that's really true even in romantic relationships, where it's like they could be the closest person to you, but you will never know what is truly, truly going on in their head.
Yeah.
Right? And yeah, communication, of course, that helps a lot and everything, but everyone has their own little secrets, right? Secrets that it might not be a secret in a vindictive way,
Right.
but it's just something that they're dealing with on their own, right? So I think the last relationship ended. It was because he was self-aware enough to be like, I don't love myself enough to be able to give you the love that you deserve.
Right.
So I think that's why it was so difficult. But because it wasn't that we didn't love each other anymore. It was just that we both had some work to do on ourselves.
Yeah.
And he realized that he was like, I need to figure out whatever's going on in here before I can truly be who I am for you. Right. So I think that was why it was such a shitty thing. And the whole process that I went through was like, I just felt that I wasn't enough, right? I was like, oh, if I was enough, he wouldn't be like that. He wouldn't have broken up with me, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Whereas like, no, like you are always enough, right? It's just where someone else can meet you at their certain point in life.
For sure.
And that's just a lesson that I've had to remind myself of, is that someone else's decision doesn't dictate your own value, right?
100%.
And I think that's something that I've been working really hard at, is just loving myself also and being happy for what I am and who I am, like deep feeler, like super emotional.
Yes.
Like I used to always think that those were terrible things, right? Like I'm a server, like actions, like I will do things for you type of thing, and I'm happy to do them. It's not ever a burden. And there was a part of me that after that happened, I was like, oh, I'm not going to do any of that anymore because I don't want to get hurt.
Right.
And it was a way of me closing up. And I was like that for a really, really long time. And it was, part of it was like traveling. And that's where I let the feelings come in, and I had to reason with myself and be like, no, it's not you, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not you. It's them, right? And that's just a big lesson that I've had to learn. Honestly, I'm still working through it, right? I don't think it's ever something that you just are at an angle with. It's a constant learning thing, learning about yourself. You always shift too, right? So you never really know. But yeah, the lesson is I always think that you're enough. If you're willing to put in work all the time to just learn more, be more aware of yourself, you're always enough.
For sure.
Yeah.
I love that. And I appreciate you being vulnerable with that too.
Absolutely.
Like, I think, like there's a general human tendency to internalize the things happening around us. Like,
always.
Yeah, this person doing this means this about me, but it doesn't have to. It doesn't, like, most things aren't personal.
It's not.
You know, especially if they're explicitly saying, like, you know, this is the, like, I don't have the love for myself to give you.
Yeah.
And that's something I've had to learn in relationships too, is like, people can only give you what they have. Mm-hmm. If they don't love themselves, if they're not accountable to themselves, if they're not honest with themselves, you cannot expect someone to be honest with you or love you or be accountable to you. They don't have that to offer.
Yeah.
It's like going to a guy's house and like, oh, I have no oranges, but then you're mad at him for not giving you any oranges. It's like, well, you know, I don't have any, bro.
I want orange juice.
Exactly, right?
Yeah. I think it's a big thing too. And there's no hatred towards him or anything. It's actually, I was in shock, right? And I was just like, that is a huge realization for someone to make. And it's a very mature decision to be able to do that, right? And to have enough realization within yourself that that's just something you have to work on before you can be someone for something else, or before you can be someone for someone else.
Yeah.
And like there was another situation where my previous relationship, it's like I got cheated on, and I was like, oh, what's wrong with me?
Right.
That was my first reaction. I was like, what did I do wrong for you to do this to me, right? And that's just not the way to think, right? That's a destructive way to think, right? Because like, again, it comes back to you always being enough. It's not you, right? It's them.
Yeah, that's definitely a painful experience. Like someone betraying your trust in that way. But yeah, also it's like, it's not a personal thing. It's like, it's their inability to commit, or their own insecurities, or whatever that thing might be. Because like anyone who's actually well adjusted, or someone who actually loves themselves, or somebody who's a conscious being, doesn't do that.
They don't.
Like the person who does that is in pain in some way. And like, even that's the thing, right? You say like, you're never gonna know like your partner truly. Like, again, we're still trying to figure out our own selves, and we live in our own bodies and we live in our own minds, and it's hard for us to know ourselves. But like, I think a lot of the reasons why people like can't, like they feel like they can't be honest in relationships is because that whole dynamic we spoke about earlier of like, this person might not like me if they know this about me. Right. Especially in like a romantic relationship of like, that's like so intimate and has like so much potential for pain. Yeah. Absolutely. So like, if you feel that way in your friendships, or like in a work environment, in a relationship, that's going to be amplified by like 100. Yeah. You know? Yeah. So yeah, I think relationships are like some of the greatest catalysts for growth. But like, even when I hear that, I also don't think you need to be this perfect thing and have it all figured out and be like, I love myself completely to be in a relationship. I think there's a lot of work to be done in relationship with someone if you're both willing to do that work together, because it's fucking hard.
Yeah. And I definitely think that there are some things that you can't heal unless you are in a relationship with someone who understands what you need to heal.
Yeah.
Right. So
that's huge.
Yeah.
I would love for you to dig into that deeper. Like, what is one thing or some things that you feel like you can't heal with unless like, or are better healed in relationship, I suppose.
There's a really popular, like, it's attachment theory.
Okay.
Right? So it's like, you could be, so I thought I was an anxious attachment. Like, I had that style, an anxious attachment style. Mm-hmm. With
like anxious avoidant or anxious?
Just anxious, straight anxious.
Like anxious attachment. Like,
attachment. Yeah. And that obviously stemmed from a bunch of childhood trauma stuff that I was working through. Mm-hmm. I thought, and I was working with my therapist, and she was like, you know what? Sometimes those attachment styles come out dependent on the person you're with, right? So I think that's one of the things that's really hard to heal on your own, because those are attachment styles that you experience with someone else, right? So I can paint a picture. It's like, I was anxious with an ex or something like that, and it might have been the actions that he was taking, making me second guess myself, making me think that there was something happening, right? Like, I got cheated on before. I had that trauma also that I was bringing over, which is not fair. I'm working on it, but trauma nonetheless, right? And you could have two people, someone who would be like, oh, that's stupid. I'm not going to update you where I am. I'm going to just hang out with my friends, and you're not going to hear from me for the whole night. And I'm going to get back at 3 a.m. Right?
That's crazy.
Versus there's someone else who would be like, hey, just hanging out with the guys. Like, I'm going to be home late. This is when I'll be home, type of thing, right? Completely opposite experiences. And one of them I felt obviously really, really anxious. The other one, I'm just like, I'm secure. And that was what my therapist kind of made me realize. She's like, honestly, I don't think you're an anxious attachment. Like, you don't have that style. She was like, I think it's just the person you're with, right? And when someone understands any of the trauma that you have, it's so much easier for you to be able to be like, this is what I need from you to feel okay. And it might not be forever. It might just be for a little bit until I get secure in that sense. But that's one of the things that it's just like, I think you have to heal with someone in that sense. Well, there's a lot of other stuff that you could heal by yourself, but I think that's one important one that I've experienced, that you need someone else there for you.
That makes all the sense in the world. It's just like, I don't know, I relate it to myself in like combat sports, where it's like, you can run and you can like lift weights and stuff, but to be good at fighting, you got to fight. You got to
do it.
You got to spar, right? And it's like the same thing. To be good in a relationship, you have to be in a relationship. You can read books. You can have your mantras or whatever, but like ultimately to build those skills, you have to be in a relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that you've also had some let's say interesting relationships too, that I think you probably grew from a lot. And learned from a lot. And I know for me, when I look back at it, I never regret a relationship. I think I needed to go through those to learn more about myself and to learn more about what I wanted or how I was as a girlfriend in a relationship, right? Because it's easy to put blame on. It's like always them, but it's like, well, maybe I could have been better at this, right? And I'd be interested to know your side too.
Yeah. I think I relate to you a lot, where I've shared this before, but everything is my fault. Like I think that's taken me really far. Like, but everything is balance. You know what I mean? Like for me, the everything is my fault gives me a lot of power. Because then everything's in my control to change it and make it better. If I'm a victim, if I say, I'm in this place because of that person, or because of this thing that happened to me, or because I was born here, or because I was born like this, like, then I give away my power to all of those things that I'm blaming. And those things are then responsible for my growth and my happiness. And then I guess I'm just a victim for life.
Right.
But if everything's my fault, then everything's in my power to make my life better. Then everything is within my grasp and my agency to be able to be like, okay, well, I'm not going to do that anymore, because that was the thing that was my fault. Like, yeah, my relationship history, like, is kind of like, I'm in a long relationship and I'm single for a year, and I'm in a long relationship and then I'm single for a year, and then I'm in a long relationship.
Yeah.
You know, I've never really like had flings or anything like that. Like, I've always kind of, I've had like one night stands and stuff, but like I've like, in that experience, I just felt how empty it was.
Exactly the same. Yeah.
And I was just like, this isn't what they make it to be on TV, where it's this like super hot, steamy, passionate thing. It's like, this is weird and awkward, and I don't fucking know you.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's such an intimate exchange of energy that like some people can do it and they're so into it, but it's just like, I hate every second
I honestly don't like, maybe that's me, maybe it's me being judgmental, but I actually don't think anyone can. Without dissociating from the experience itself.
Right.
Because to treat someone else like a casual sex partner or whatever, you also have to treat yourself like that.
That is very true. Yeah.
You are now saying that I'm a casual pleasure object for you.
Yeah.
And you are that for me. It really dehumanizes us, in my opinion. Like, whatever you do, like, I don't want to judge people and be like, be like, oh, you're a bad person. But like, is that conducive to your growth or to your fulfillment or to your relationship with yourself? I would argue that it's not, even if people argue that it is.
Yeah.
I'd be like, I would love to talk to somebody. Like, if you're listening to this podcast and you find that, like, come and hit me up and we'll have a podcast about it. I would love to talk to somebody about that.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, to me, even the act of sex is far better in every single way when you love someone and you trust someone.
Absolutely.
And they know you and you know them, and like it's just far better in that way. Like, and that's why I've always kind of sought out long-term relationships, and I've always tried to really value those. I'm trying to think of like one thing that I could like a lesson or something I could take from each of them, but
even if it's not just a lesson, I think each one you go through teaches you what you want in the next, or what you don't want in the next, right? Or what you could do differently.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I also think, like, because of my relationships are so long, like, my capacity for love in each one has changed. Like, in a high school relationship, like my high school sweetheart or whatever, like, I loved her. But my capacity to love her was way less than the next girl I was with, because at that point I had learned a lot more. I'm in a different place financially or whatever, or spiritually, all these different things. And then even the next one after that, and then the next one after that. Like,
exactly.
It's really hard to compare them, but like, none of them have changed. Right? So like, this is something that I always like speak to people when they do reach out to me about relationship advice or whatever, is like, are you waiting for this person to change? For you to be happy, or for you to feel loved, or for you to feel safe? Are you waiting for this person to change, or are you waiting for something to change, and is that thing that needs to change in your control or not?
Yeah.
And then like, there's all of these things, all of these feelings, because you want to see the best in people. You want to be like, this person has all these things, and they have so much potential.
The potential, yeah.
You know? But like, if you can be really honest with yourself, which is a scary thing, because then you might have to change your whole life, like we said at the beginning of this podcast, right? But if you can be honest with yourself and know that the change really relies on them, and there's nothing you can do to do that, and in the state that you're in right now, and the dynamic that you're in right now, are you happy or not? And if you're not happy or fulfilled, then it might be best for you to part ways, or to have a difficult conversation, or whatever the thing that needs to go down there. And speaking on like happiness, like, are you happy or whatever? I remember in my last podcast, I was talking to Leslie, and that was like kind of the catalyst for his breakup. The conversation was like, are you happy?
Yeah.
And they were both not happy. So then it was the end. Like, I reflected on that later, and I was speaking to my own partner about it. And it's like, it's a 2-part question. It's like, are you happy?
Yeah.
And if you're not happy, that's okay. But then the next question is, are we growing?
Yes.
Because if you're not happy and you're not growing, then you're just suffering for no reason. But like we said, growth comes from difficulty. So like, and that's the thing. You can have a hard day, you can have a hard week, you can have a hard month, you can have a hard year.
Yeah.
especially in a lifelong relationship with yourself or with a romantic partner. It's okay for you to have hard years, but are you growing in those years?
Absolutely.
Or are you running away from it? Are you ignoring it, like, and just being like, oh, this is hard, but like, let's just get over it and
Right.
go for dinner and get drunk, and then we'll forget about it and we'll be fine.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know? If you're still growing and you're unhappy, I'd say let it ride a bit.
Yeah.
You know?
Fight for it a little. Let's see how it goes. Right.
I think so, especially
Yeah.
in this day and age. I think it's just so hard for me to find even people in general who resonate with my values and
Yeah.
who I am, and like just friends even. So like on a relationship level, like I value that a lot. So like it's gonna take a lot for me to give up on it.
Yeah.
You know?
I think so too. And I don't know how you are with it, but I am so much more a fixer than just like a throw it away.
Yeah.
And to a fault, quite honestly, where I'm just like, no, we can fix this, we can fix this, we can fix this.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I think it's also having that tenacity to just be like, I don't want to give up on you, right?
Yeah.
And like, I don't want to give up on this, but it's also knowing when to call it quits, right?
Yeah.
It's hard too, because like I said, it's, you envision the life with this person, right? And I think that's the hardest part, the part that hurts the most, but the part that, if you think about it, also doesn't make the most sense, because you are in love with the potential of someone or the potential life that you have with someone, not the current state of it.
Yeah.
And I am guilty for that, for falling in love with the potential, right?
I think we all are. You know? Especially even as an entrepreneur, you have to fall in love with the potential. Otherwise you're like, oh, I love this thing that makes me very minimal money.
Yeah. Very true.
And it's super hard and lonely.
Yeah.
Like there's a certain part of you that has to see the potential in things. But yeah, you can't fall in love with that solely.
Yeah.
I'd agree with that for sure.
Yeah.
You know, I believe in relationship, compromise needs to be made.
Absolutely.
Like you need to be able to work with someone and understand someone, like, and to be honest, everyone's healing from something. So you can say it's unfair to bring whatever pain you have into a relationship, which may or may not be true. I don't know. I'm not a therapist or an expert on anything. But also it's like, from my personal point of view, it's like, well, we all come with those things and we're all here to help each other heal those things together, especially in a romantic relationship, right?
Yeah.
But for me, the distinction is like, do I have to abandon myself in order to maintain this relationship?
Yeah.
And I think that's actually the biggest lesson I learned from my last relationship was like, yeah, I'm a fixer too. I want to fix this relationship. What can I do to serve this relationship and help it? And like, I'm happy to, because this is my role in life. I'm here to provide value and be this type of person. And in that, we can get lost and stop thinking about ourselves. But like we said earlier, you can't give what you don't have. So if you're not giving something to yourself, you can't truly give that to somebody. So you're not serving anybody by neglecting yourself. And that's the thing. Like, yes, compromise is necessary. But are you compromising your principles, your values, who you truly are, and what you truly feel? If you have to abandon yourself to keep a relationship, that's the line for me.
Yeah.
That's
I
when
agree.
it's like, you don't fix that no more.
Exactly.
It's time to fix yourself. It's time to figure out your own thing and honor yourself, you know?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that, because as fixers, it's literally in our nature, right? And we fix and we fix and we fix, and then we just lose ourselves in that process, right?
And when you lose yourself, you can't give yourself.
No.
So at the end of the day,
Exactly,
like,
yeah.
if you truly want to be someone of service, if you truly want to bring value to your relationships, then you have to prioritize yourself.
Yeah.
It's not a thing that's like opposing forces. They are one thing. And when integrated and in harmony, that's when you can actually build that thing. And like, for me, the bad relationships, or whatever, if you want to call them bad, like, give me so much context in my new relationship now.
Yeah.
Like, where I think if like you only were with one person, you might take a lot of stuff for granted and be like, oh, this person, and you just get mad at this tiniest little things. But like, when you've been in some hard stuff, or you've like been in things that really aren't aligned for you, and then you find something that is aligned, like, you can really actually viscerally know that like this is good for me.
Yeah.
Versus like all the other shit that
Exactly.
I've been in.
Yeah. I'm not the person to be like, oh, I've lost all hope.
Yeah.
I think
You can't lose hope.
Yeah, I think every heartbreak comes with tons and tons of lessons, and I'm kind of in a phase where, like I said, if it's meant for you, it will come back. If it's meant to be, it will be, and if it's not, let it go, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's important to address your traumas and
Yeah,
all that stuff, but don't sit in that.
Yeah.
Like, how do you brighten up a dark room? Do you do it by gathering every particle of darkness and removing it? Or do you brighten up a dark room by introducing light?
Yeah.
Like, there's only so much you can do by trying to look at something, decipher it, and get rid of it, or heal it, or whatever. Sometimes you just got to turn the light on. Sometimes you got to bring in some joy.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to go for a hike. Sometimes you got to travel. Sometimes you got to do something like that to introduce light into the room, because that's actually the fastest way to deal with darkness in your life, I think.
Absolutely.
Like, healing doesn't have to be this heavy thing where you like just sit in a dark room for 10 years or whatever.
Yeah. And it's not totally about removing it, right?
Yeah.
It's, I think a lot of sadness and pain might always be in you to a certain point, right?
Yeah.
But it's making the decision to maybe not focus on it so much and find light in other things and find joy in other things.
Yeah.
And put that energy that you would have otherwise be a bit like focused on your darkness into things that you actually love, right? So
Totally.
that's one other recommendation that I have, is just like, even through the sadness and the pain, it's like, go and do things that you love.
Yeah.
Like I hiked so much when I was really sad, hiked so much, went out with friends. Like, even if I was this sulky person, they understood it, right?
Yeah.
And I understood that this was actually good for me, even if it was the last thing I wanted to do.
That's so great.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know that it's hard and it will never ever get easy. Like, I don't think heartbreak ever gets easier, but it's just having the awareness to continue doing things that you love. Right? Because it's just a period. Like, you will get through it, and you have gotten through 100% of the troubles and tribulations that you have been put through. So you can absolutely do it. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that mindset, you know? Yeah, especially in the hardest times where it feels like you're down and out.
Yeah.
You know, just remember that if you're still here standing and breathing, then you're undefeated.
Something. Yeah, you did something. You did something right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, you know, you're back here in Calgary now. You've traveled the world, it seems, or a big chunk of it.
Yeah.
Like, what do you see for yourself now? Are you going to be staying here in Calgary now? Or are you going to go back out, like, on a plane and get out of here soon? Or, like, have you given any thought, or where are you at?
There is so much more to explore in this world. I think Calgary will always be home.
Yeah.
I can't get away from the people here. I love the people here. And I'm probably going to fly out again. Not going to lie. I don't know where that is, but I know come fall, winter time, I'm probably going to be out again.
Okay,
and
nice.
I can see myself building a life where I'm here for spring, summer, fallish maybe, and then gone for the cold months because I'm a chicken.
That's the best. Yeah, I love that.
And there's not really any fear anymore in doing that. I think it's just been, now that I've experienced it, it's like, all right, I love this, right? And if I can find, if I have someone to do it with, I'd love to share that experience, right? And I think a lot of the fear was like, oh, what if this doesn't work out? And I came to the conclusion that was like, so what? If it doesn't work out, you come back to Calgary.
Yeah.
You come back home and then you try again or something. So what? It's like that whole fear of something not working out, I think wasn't so much for myself. It was fear of what other people would think. It's like, oh, you're a failure. Like, this didn't work out for you.
Yeah.
I told you so. Even though none of my friends ever said that.
Exactly.
It's just this thing you build in your mind, right?
Yeah.
Which is absolutely stupid. But
I can relate.
that's the thing. It's like, so what if it doesn't work out?
Yeah.
You come back and you do something else, or you try again, right?
Yeah.
So to answer your question in a long-winded way, yes, I am definitely going out, going to explore a little bit more for sure. I think the world is so vast and so big, and there's so many people to connect with and stories to learn and things to learn, that it would be a shame not to explore it a little bit more.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I love that so much because, like, a lot of us don't realize that the worst case scenario is what we're already living in.
Yeah.
Because you're already living in, like you said, if anything happens, I'll just go live my life again. If I run out of money, I can just go get another job. If I, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's literally that. Like, you can always come back home. You can always go back to the life that you're living now. There's, like, the risk that's built up in our head is really just built up in our head to a certain extent, at least, you know?
God, that hit actually really hard. Jeez. The worst case scenario is what we're currently living in. Yeah. Gosh.
Like, even in that whole thing of trying to protect your heart after you're heartbroken.
Yeah.
You're already in the scenario of being alone or whatever, or being hurt or whatever. Like, why not give it a chance to be in love?
Yeah.
Like, the worst case scenario, you're just back in the exact same spot you are right now.
Exactly. Jeez.
You know, Jess, I really appreciate you being so vulnerable with everything, like here in this conversation, but also just on social and just, I'm sure, like, just in your everyday life. I think that the world needs more people like that. I think the world needs more of that. I think that's the thing that's actually going to help people heal, and make a better world. And so, like, thank you for sharing this time with me today. I don't know, like...
I feel like you've also been super vulnerable in terms of just being on social too, and everything that you post, that it's not like I'm talking to a different person. It's like when we sit down, we're exactly how we are on social, I think. And that's the cool part that I absolutely love about it.
Yeah, I love that. Well, Jess, I appreciate it so much. I like to end my podcast, like, in a similar way. Just like I always say, you know, I did this for a past version of myself. So I'm wondering if you have anything, like any thoughts or nuggets or anything to, like, leave for someone who might be walking in a similar path as you, or who's listening to this conversation, who can, like, relate to you and who you are, and just share some type of positivity, add some light to a dark room or whatever.
I love that. And I think for me, being someone who feels so deeply and thinking that was a fault before, so throughout my whole journey, I think that the one tip I can give to anyone is that don't be afraid to feel what you have to feel, because it will bring you to exactly where you need to be in life.
Love it. Thanks, Jess. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Nick.
All right. Peace.
Peace.